J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth epic of The Lord of the Rings has captivated audiences for decades, starting with The Hobbit in 1937. His tale ultimately prompted what would be one of the longest-standing and most lucrative franchises across literature, film, and television. Peter Jackson first brought Tolkien's world to life with the Lord of the Rings film trilogy in the early 2000s, followed by the Hobbit movies a decade later. 8 years after the final Hobbit installment, J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay brought the fantastical universe to television with the Rings of Power on Amazon Prime in 2022, with the second season premiering on Aug. 29, 2024. The Lord of the Rings is also getting the anime treatment later this year through The Lord of the Rings: The War of the Rohirrim, which will be released in theaters on Dec. 13. Whether you're new to the series or revisiting the epic saga, knowing where to start can be tricky, as the 6 films and television series take place over thousands of years. Here's how to watch the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies, as well as the Rings of Power series, in both release and chronological order. How to watch the Lord of the Rings movies and TV show in release order. The Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring 2001. The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers 2002. The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King 2003. The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey 2012. The Hobbit: The Desolation of Smaug 2013. The Hobbit: The Battle of the Five Armies 2014. The Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power 2022 present. How to watch the Lord of the Rings movies and TV show in chronological order. The Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power. Set thousands of years before the events of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power takes place during the Second Age of Middle-earth. According to the series showrunners, The Rings of Power offers an extensive backstory narrative for some of the major plot points in the iconic saga. The Rings of Power unites all the major stories of Middle-earth's Second Age: the forging of the rings, the rise of the Dark Lord Sauron, the epic tale of Numenor, and the last alliance of elves and men. Payne and McKay said. Until now, audiences have only seen on screen the story of the One Ring, but before there was one, there were many. The series lays the foundation for the events that unfold in later films, such as the creation of the One Ring, and features characters like Galadriel Morfydd Clark and Elrond Robert Aramayo, who are also prominent in the later stories. The series is in the throes of its second season after premiering in August 2024. The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey 2012. An Unexpected Journey is set 60 years before the events of The Lord of the Rings, and marks the beginning of Bilbo Baggins' Martin Freeman adventure in the timeline. The story begins with the wizard Gandalf Ian McKellen recruiting Bilbo to join Thorin Oakenshield Richard Armitage and his band of dwarves on a quest to reclaim their homeland from the dragon Smaug. The journey is fraught with danger as they face numerous challenges, including trolls, orcs, and a voyage through the Misty Mountains, where Bilbo encounters Gollum Andy Serkis and obtains the One Ring. Meanwhile, Gandalf seeks help from the White Council, including Galadriel Cate Blanchett, who senses the growing darkness in Middle-earth and supports Gandalf's concerns about a rising evil, foreshadowing the larger conflict that will unfold. The Hobbit: The Desolation of Smaug. Set in the middle of the quest to reclaim the Lonely Mountain, The Desolation of Smaug continues the journey of Thorin and his company, as they are pursued by Azog's orcs and face the threat of the dragon Smaug. Along the way, they seek refuge with Bjorn Mikael Persbrandt, navigate the dangers of Mirkwood, and encounter wood elves before reaching Laketown. Meanwhile, Gandalf uncovers Sauron's growing power in Dol Guldur. The film builds up to the climactic encounter between Bilbo and the dragon Smaug, voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch, who awakens to wreak havoc on Laketown. The film takes place in the years leading up to the events of The Lord of the Rings, setting the stage for the eventual War of the Ring and the conclusion of the Hobbit trilogy. The Hobbit: The Battle of the Five Armies. The Battle of the Five Armies takes place immediately after the events of the Desolation of Smaug, and sees the resolution of the conflict with Smaug, where Bard Luke Evans emerges as a hero by slaying the dragon. The narrative builds toward an epic confrontation involving dwarves, elves, men and orcs, with alliances forged in the titular battle. The film concludes in the timeline where The Lord of the Rings begins, 60 years later, as Bilbo returns to the Shire, where he's paid a visit by Gandalf on his 111th birthday. The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Set in the Third Age of Middle-earth, The Fellowship of the Ring follows the story of Frodo Baggins' Elijah Wood, a young cousin of Bilbo who inherits the One Ring. With Sauron's forces pursuing the ring to reclaim it, Frodo embarks on a journey to destroy it. Frodo forms the Fellowship, and they face numerous challenges as they navigate the perilous mines of Moria and the mystical forest of Lothlorien, an elf realm ruled by Galadriel. The film sets the stage for the epic battle that will determine the fate of Middle-earth. The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. The Two Towers picks up where the Fellowship of the Ring left off, and the adventure intensifies as the Fellowship is divided and Frodo and Sam Sean Astin continue their quest to destroy the ring, guided by the treacherous Gollum. The narrative splits into multiple threads, following the scattered members of the Fellowship as they face their respective challenges. The film's central conflict revolves around the growing threat of Sauron and Saruman as their forces spread across Middle-earth, culminating in the epic Battle of Helm's Deep, ultimately setting the stage for the final confrontation. The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. The Return of the King brings the trilogy to its epic conclusion in the final days of the War of the Ring. As Frodo and Sam make their final push toward Mount Doom, the rest of the Fellowship rallies the forces for a last stand against Sauron's army. The story concludes with the destruction of the One Ring, the downfall of Sauron, and the restoration of peace. Aragorn is crowned king and Frodo departs for the Undying Lands, marking the end of an era and leaving behind a legacy. Where to watch the Lord of the Rings movies and TV show. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is available to stream on Max, and the Hobbit trilogy is also on Max. The Rings of Power is streaming exclusively on Amazon Prime Video.